It's more challenging than ever to meet the demands of competing priorities that work throws our way. From emails to reports and project proposals, we need help to get it all done. Grammarly is the essential AI communication assistant that boosts your productivity at work, so you can get more of what you need done faster, no matter what or where you're writing. Grammarly sets the standard for responsible AI and equips you with the best tools to do your job, like AI-powered features that help you write and edit quickly everywhere you write, or tone features that help you communicate more confidently. Just a few clicks can tailor your tone and writing so you come across exactly as you intend. No wonder 93% of professionals report that Grammarly helps them get more work done. Let Grammarly take the busy work off your plate so you can focus on high-impact work. Download Grammarly for free at grammarly.com/podcast. That's grammarly.com/podcast.
Betting on sports can be hard, but hiring Morgan & Morgan is easy. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and more than 1,000 lawyers. Their fee is free until they win. Find out more information at forthepeople.com/bestbets or dial pound law, that is pound 529 from your cell phone, and that is FOR, thepeople.com/bestbets. This is a paid advertisement. Hey, warmer friendly hello, welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got a great podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends, Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the show/podcast Rob's Best Bets. We're going to be chatting with him about what we've been seeing over the last few weeks in college basketball. Going to be talking about really what we've been seeing out of the SEC as well, as it has been very impressive what they've been able to put together. We'll take a look at a few games for Wednesday and some of the things that he takes a look at with regards to his handicapping this time of year. In the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday, as we had some bank shots. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at unit_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter. So, as per usual, please send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had a great time with college basketball slate on Tuesday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Both underdogs covered at the Jimmy V Classic, with Arkansas being able to get an outright win over Michigan, 89-87 the final. Michigan came out and shot 16 of their first 24, and they shoot 57.5% from the floor, 8 of 18 from three-point range. But Arkansas, they were able to win the battle on glass, 34-32. They also committed fewer turnovers, 17-14, with Boogie Flan boogieing all around with 20 points, 7 assists. He goes 2 of 7 from 3, but you had a nice performance from Jonas Adu, who's been really dealing with injury all season long. 11.7 boards. He was in the starting lineup, and Trevon Brazil was also dealt with injury. 15 big points. Will Shedder was able to pop it well from three-point range. He, for Michigan, comes off the bench, 13 points, 3 of 4 from three-point range, but not enough in this one. And then the early game does go the way of Tennessee on the money line, but if you had took the points with Miami, you did get there. 75-62 final in this one. As for Miami, they had a stretch of no points for 8+ minutes from the end of the first half into the second half, and if you like me at the over, that was very costly, as Miami 8 of 33 from three-point range, Tennessee 10 of 25 from three-point range, with Chaz Lanier. The Chaz was able to deliver 22 points, and then Zakai Ziegler, 9 assists to 3 turnovers with 13 points for Miami. They were able to get 14 points and 12 rebounds out of Lynn Kidd, but not enough in this one, as that drought was very costly for them. And the Big East, they have been having a up and down season, to say the least, as Butler loses at home for a second time. They've already lost at home to Ossipee. Now they lose to North Dakota State. The Bison win 71-68 as they go 13 of 30 from three-point range. Jaleel White, 27 points, 7 of 9 from three-point range. Jackson Moniz, he was able to supply the team with a 4 of 10 three-point shooting performance, 25 points, 7 rebounds. Now the rest of the team outside of them had 19 points, but enough to get the job done. As for Butler, they actually win the turnover battle 11-4. They play even up on the glass, and Jamal Telford along Pierre Brooks supplied them with 49 points. The rest of the team, though, they only put up 19 points of their own. So That was a big-time win out there for the mid-majors, and for Duke, they're unable to cover against Incarnate Word, but they were able to really stifle them on defense. 72-46 final in this one, as just some cold shooting in this game. A combined 13 of 48 from three-point range for both of these teams, but you were able to get 17 points, 7 rebounds out of Kamen Mulach. Hopefully I said that correctly. I always get that name incorrect, but also off the bench, guy that's really been emerging, Isaiah Evans. Back-to-back 14-plus point performances. He had 14 in this one. As a matter of fact, he's had 14-plus in now 3 of the team's last 4 games. And for Duke, they won the battle on glass 44-26. Home night for Cooper Flagg, only 6 points, 8 rebounds, but really didn't need a lot out of him to be able to get the job done. Coppin State, well, they got past 55 just barely, and they get a nice cover against NC State, 66-56, the final for NC State. Not necessarily their best performance, as for Coppin State, they lose the turnover battle 15-9, but Coppin State wasn't too bad on the glass. They lose that battle 38-36. You were able to have Marcus Hill supply NC State with 16 points, but that line was north of 30, and it came nowhere near covering that. Had a lot of D1 versus non-D1 games, but you also had an interesting game between Princeton and Monmouth. Princeton, they get the win, but no cover, 71-67. The final is for Monmouth, now just 1-10 straight up on the season, but starting to cover some numbers for Princeton. Xavier Lee, 23 points, 6 rebounds, and for Monmouth, they had Abdi Bashir be able to supply the team with 26 points. So, nice quality cover there. At the end of the night, it was Washington who was able to get themselves a nice quality cover. They win, they cover by a count of 87-69 over Eastern Washington. And someone not named Great Osibor led the team in scoring, as he had 23 points out of Makai Mason. He stepped up very big in this game for a Washington team. I was able to go 10 of 19 from three-point range. Eastern Washington certainly has been giving it up on defense thus far this season. I think that is putting it as politely as I can. And for Eastern Washington, they themselves went 5 of 17 from three-point range on this night. If you're looking at one of your worst overall cover teams in all of college basketball, it would be UMKC, but they get their second cover of the year, and they take down Portland, this by a count of 69-64. So they now stand at 2-6 against the spread. They went 9 of 21 from 3, and Portland 3 of 18 from distance, as they did have a double-double in this game, 17 points, 10 rebounds out of Austin Rapp. So that was good for them, and this was also good. Cornell, they go on the road, and they get a win over a Big Ten foe. I think that was their first road win against a power conference team since the 2009-10 season. 88-80 the final, and it's not even like they shot well from 3. 9 of 32 from distance, but won the turnover battle by a count of 18-10. They were able to do a solid job of being able to get one of their main men going in A.K. Okerke. He was able to supply the team with 24 points, and for Cal, just a mitigated disaster in this game with regards to the turnover. So that was a interesting little takeaway there. If you're looking at more of these teams that have been a little bit off the beaten path, how about what we've been seeing with Wyoming and South Dakota? As I stupidly took the money line with Wyoming, game lands on 1 after the spread was between 1 and 1.5. Wyoming, they come back, but they're unable to get the outright win. But if you took the 1 to 1.5, you either got a push or a cover by a count of 82-81. Just sometimes the way that those games land. And for South Dakota, they have been one of your better over teams in all of college basketball. 8 overs to just 1 under thus far this season. So been able to make a lot of money there. And Rhode Island has been a very good over team thus far this season. This one went to double overtime. So if you took the under, man, this was just brutal. But that said, Brown, they get the win and hand Rhode Island their first loss of the year. 84-80 the final, as in this game for Rhode Island, they shoot just 36% from the floor, lose the turnover battle 21-14, though they did have 22 points out of Sebastian Thomas, and it was Keno Lilly Jr. with a double, 23 points, 10 assists that led the team. As for Brown, they had 7 different players playing this game. They all played 21-plus minutes, so they went with a thin rotation, but in the end, they were able to get it done, and this team also got it done. Xavier all over Morgan State, 119-58. For our good friends Morgan State, this was not a good night for them, as they lose a rebound battle by a count of 54-25, and for Xavier, 12 of 18 from 3. They shoot 60% from the floor. They have been cold with 74 points or fewer in each of their previous 3 games. Well, they heated up here, and this team was able to heat up as well. Syracuse, 102-85 over Albany, as Albany has been having some rough defense thus far this season, to say the least. Syracuse shoots 63.5% from the floor. They were doing this, by the way, without J.J. Starlin, so that makes it all the more interesting. Juan Carlos, 12 points, 12 assists for Albany. They did have Amari Marshall be able to hand the team 18 points, but not enough to be able to cover that. Charleston, they go on the road and they take it to St. Joe's, who have been looking like average Joes at home, 78-75. They also lost to Central Connecticut earlier this season at home. And for Charleston, Ante Brdizovic was able to give you 17 points, 4 rebounds, so a really nice performance out there. If you're looking at one of your better under teams in all of college basketball, the Toreros of San Diego, who are now 2 overs to just 6 unders, and they lose to Long Beach 8. This game actually does go over, and by the way, you also have Xavier at 2 overs and 8 unders this year as well, in terms of teams that we did see in action on Tuesday. But Long Beach State, 76-70 winners, with Cam Bryant being able to put in their 25 points. So very good performance out there in Wisconsin versus Illinois. Illinois is able to get the job done on the money line, but it's close in a lot of places. 6.5, you just barely got there with Wisconsin. 86-80, the final for Illinois. They go just 10 of 33 from three-point range, but still a relatively good performance out of Tomislav Ivisic. He was able to give the team 11 rebounds. Kasparas Jakinovskis, he was able to throw in there 24 points, 6 boards, 5 assists, and I'm fully aware I've said his name incorrectly, so I do apologize there. And then for Wisconsin, just a mismatch. Everyone in the starting rotation had at least 9 points, but nobody had more than 15 points, so that was interesting. And DePaul's trying to introduce themselves as a new-look team, but this looked like the same old DePaul at the end of the day as they lose to Providence by a count of 70-63 in overtime. DePaul an 8-point lead with less than 4 minutes remaining, and David Skogman supplied the team with 22 points, but for Providence, they find a way. They go 6 of 9 at the free throw line. They lose the turnover battle 17-11, but they won the rebound battle 46-36. Bryce Hopkins, massive X factor in this game, 19 points, 10 rebounds, and Bentley Joseph able to supply the team with 20 points as well. And right now, you've got no Andre Curbelo for Southern Miss, and right now, well, you don't have a lot of hope for them right now as well. 86-58, the final in this one, as Tulane, they go 8 of 22 from three-point range. Tulane was also able to win the turnover battle by a count of 21-7. Less than savory look there, and if you're looking at college basketball as a whole, we have been getting some savory looks, we have been getting some unsavory looks, but it has still been a small lead for overs over unders overall for the college basketball season, and over the last 7 days, we have seen 132 overs to 122 unders, so about a 52% hit rate to the over, and favorites have been having themselves a nice last 7 days, 132, 123, and 5 against the spread. If you're looking overall at the season, you've got favorites hitting at just a rate of 48.3%, though 752, 805, and 24 against the spread, with overs hitting at about 50.5%, 786 overs to 773 under. So that's where we're seeing college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on Tuesday. Now let's take a look at Wednesday and just what we've got in general in this college basketball landscape with our good friend Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the show/podcast Rob's Best Bets. And on Chris Kissy with myself, Peggy Peterson, now a part of the Beast and Family Podcast. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Chris Kissy with myself, Peggy Peterson, now part of the Beast and Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Rob Donaldson. He does great work with the show/podcast Rob's Best Bets. Every single time he joins me, lends such great insights, as he, much like myself, does a tremendous job all 12 months of the year taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. You're able to find him on the old Twitter/X at RobDFB altogether. And Rob, it is always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Greg. And, certainly college basketball season is full swing now. College football Saturdays are really no longer. There's just a playoff. And if you are a fan of college athletics, it's all eyes on this sport. And hey, I know that's how we like it.
Yes, it certainly is. And with regards to what we've been seeing the last week or two in college basketball, what have been some of your main takeaways? Because I look at what we get in terms of those Feast Week tournaments, and while they're fun, they just feel like they're a little bit more wackadoo. I take a lot more from these challenges, and I think that things are just being reaffirmed that the SEC just stands head and shoulders above everyone else in all of college basketball right now.
It's very interesting, right? Because there's a lot of chapters to a college basketball season. There's the non-con and the early season tournaments that really get your blood flowing and your passion going for the sport. And then it hits conference play, where you've got rivalries renewed and some crazy home court atmospheres. I mean, right now we're watching Rutgers at the rack against Penn State, and the place is rocking, and we're seeing Brown against Rhode Island. We have great venues across mid-major and high-major ranks. And then, as we kind of tail off towards the end, we get neutral courts again, but it's a more sense of urgency because the season is on the line. And so there's a lot of different chapters, and ultimately, I think you just kind of got to ride the season in waves, and right now we're in that second wave of things.
Yep, we certainly are in that second wave of things, and as we do approach that second wave, who are some of the types of teams that you look at in terms of teams that you want to be backing and teams that you want to be fading? Because I do think that it is so interesting in this day and age of the transfer portal, because now you've got quite a few teams that have a few games under their belt. And I always find this to be the case this time of year, as well as we've got a lot of these teams that maybe they start out slow against the spread. A lot of bettors, they just sort of leave them for dead. And now is the time to be able to scoop them up and be able to sort of buy in at their lowest point.
100%. And I don't think it's just against the spread records that you kind of got to peer at. On both sides of the coin, I think there are teams that maybe are undefeated or 8-1 or 7-2 and have that glossy looking record because they beat up on a lot of cupcakes in the non-con slate. And then on the other side of the coin, you have teams like maybe a Duquesne, for example, who's 2-7 in the bottom of the A10 after a magical run last season, but they've picked it up as of late. And I think that's something that you kind of got to monitor, because just because you have an ugly record and it feels like the world is collapsing against this team, they're the worst team in all of basketball, they can't win games, it can flip on a dime when you have talent. And that's just something I really do like backing some of those bottom feeder teams, because nobody's wanting to back them, and sometimes I'm going to be that guy.
And I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because we do have Duquesne in action on Wednesday, so you tee me up for it. Right now, Duquesne is about a 6.5 point favorite against a Maine team that I've liked what I've seen out of them. What do you make out of this sort of a matchup? Because I'm with you in terms of being able to buy in on some of these teams like Duquesne, but I do think that Maine is one of those teams where I might not want to be fading them either, because they have been so rock solid on defense and they've been so good on the road.
Actually, I am going to be betting on Duquesne tomorrow, laying that 5.5. You look at last time out for Maine, they played another A10 team in Fordham and they lost by 15, and now they're going up against a 2-7 Duquesne team with, again, it's an ugly looking record, but last time out, I thought they played a better Delaware team than what this Maine team is, and they were able to kind of beat them down in the second half. That's kind of what I see from Duquesne in this matchup, laying 5.5 with a 2-7 record. That borderline kind of feels indicative of how the game flow should play out, and I'm going to bet that side just because, again, of what we just kind of outlined there.
It is going to be really interesting to see what we get on that front, as well as for Duquesne, a team that is in quite a bit of transition, but as these guys find their bearing, they should be able to ascend as the season goes along, as we've got our good friend Rob Donaldson joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, and that's another interesting point to be taking a look at, because that's the narrative for Louisville. Louisville's one of those bunches that had a relatively rough start to the season, and I banked on them against Duke, and that was rough what we saw in the last 8 minutes. Thought we were going to get there for sure, catching 9.5. They had other ideas, but now they're laying between about 14 to 14.5 points here against UTEP with a total of 143.5. What do you make out of this sort of a game? Because with Louisville, they're a team that I'm going to be buying in on. I'm just sort of waiting for that buy point, and I think that this is just sort of the matchup in general that I don't think it's there, because UTEP does an amazing job of generating turnovers, and Louisville's been a little bit sloppy with the ball.
Yeah, and unfortunately, with teams like Louisville that are sort of like borderline outliers when it comes to, or maybe just not outliers, but fluctuating all over the place, sometimes there's a causation for that fluctuation, and right now, their starting lineup has kind of been penetrated by injuries, unfortunately. Keyshawn Pryor, who came over from South Florida, was one of those kind of not only glue pieces, but talented guys on both ends of the floor that really completes a team and can give you quality minutes. Well, he's done for the year, and now they kind of got to fill those minutes with a team that was entirely transfer portal based. And as we kind of talked about in the offseason, sometimes guys just don't gel. And when you can find that starting five and have that cohesion and then go away because of something you can't control, it's unfortunate, and it might take a little bit of time to kind of get that back under control. And for that reason, at the moment, I'm staying off of Louisville personally.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, because I do think that there's going to be a buy point for Louisville. I just feel like this is a rough matchup, and the way that you want to beat up UTEP is on the glass. If they had Keyshawn Pryor out there, perhaps they'd be able to do so. In this sort of case, I don't think so. So I'm in agreement there, and I think that that's so big to be taking a look at this time of year. How much do you take a look at some of those things like I just laid out in UTEP versus Louisville with regards to a team in UTEP that does a great job generating turnovers? Louisville about 250th in terms of turnovers per possession, because now I think that we've got a good enough sample size. We've seen enough out of these teams that we sort of know the flow of their team, and we sort of know those teams that they've got a few, shall we say, strengths, a few weaknesses, or some of these teams that they're sort of a chameleon and they can play any way possible, like in Auburn.
And I think when you're looking at the funky style of matchups of a mid-major going up against a high major, look for those unique styles. Over the years, it's been like an Eastern Kentucky that presses you up and down the floor. Northern Kentucky was the same way. You look at North Texas, winds down the shot clock every single time they have the ball in their hands. I mean, those are the styles that the other team isn't really going to get met with it a lot or a high frequency when you're in conference play or even non-conference play. And if you can highlight those matchups, I think you can extract a lot of value. And 100%, when a team is going through it, that's the type of team that they don't want to run into as well.
Absolutely. And we talk about buying low, selling high on these teams as well. What do we make of this game? Because Colgate has been the big bad wolf out there in the Patriot League for many years, and I feel like it's turning a little bit, but right now we're seeing a total of about, I would say, about a 158 or so in terms of Kentucky versus Colgate game. And right now with Kentucky, they're a 30 to a 31 point favorite. I think that it is so interesting because Kentucky has hit on all cylinders on offense, but we've seen this Colgate team be really rough with regards to their offense, but they're also slowing things down way more than we've ever seen before. And a total of like 157 in a Colgate game is something that I have to take under until further notice.
Yeah, and what I would say my favorite angle in that game is just taking Colgate with the points. It doesn't matter how many points you're kind of getting here because people want to bet on Kentucky. This is a big brand. They've got a big fan base. They obviously have a lot of talent, a new head coach. So much is going right for Kentucky this season already and in the outset as well. But you look at the other side and you see Colgate, and a lot of people are not going to recognize Colgate as the Patriot League superpower that they've been over the past decade. They're going to see, oh, this mid-major is 2-8 and getting clobbered in a lot of different travel spots. I'm just going to lay the points with Kentucky and pray. I feel like that gives you a little bit of inherent value for betting on a team with the pedigree of Colgate, despite them kind of looking shaky and not looking the same as they had in previous seasons.
Yeah, it certainly has been shaky for Colgate. And we've seen that with a lot of these teams that we thought were going to be able to dominate their respective conferences. Grand Canyon has been a disappointment. Colgate has been a disappointment. Vermont has been a massive disappointment. What have you made out of these mid-major teams that we thought were going to run their conference? And thus far this year, they just have not looked very impressive, to say the least.
And I think it kind of plays into the whole thing that we've been talking about in the segment is, you know, there's going to be a lot of teams that flip into that second chapter and turn a corner. I remember last year, you know, a team, you look at the SWAC, which is the worst conference in all basketball, but hey, it provides us fun Mondays throughout the course of the season. And a team like Texas Southern, they typically start on a very, very low note because they are traveling, trying to rake in money from these high majors. And once conference play starts up, you know, that 1-9 or that 2-7 or that 2-10, that record ends up kind of getting back to 500 until they're 17-16 and running the conference again. There's just certain things like that you really need to key in on. And, you know, you and I have been doing this long enough to know that, you know, sometimes these mid-majors will test themselves in the early going and then run through the conference like they do every year, like similar with Eastern Washington, for example.
Yep, and Eastern Washington, a very interesting team as well. They're a team that I bet on Tuesday. We will see how that turns out as we are doing this podcast. Not sure how that one is going to be panning out, but that said, in terms of what we've got for the rest of the Wednesday card, anything else that you are identifying? Because I know that you talked about Eastern Kentucky a little bit before. Right now, they're catching quite a few points against Pittsburgh. That's one that I was taking a look at as well. Anything else that's really standing out to you?
Well, you know, I looked at that line in the South Dakota State-Nevada game, and you're seeing it at 11.5, and I feel like South Dakota State is a well-respected mid-major. They're seemingly always in kind of the mix to make an NCAA tournament. Last year, they obviously had Zeke Mayo in the lineup as well. But when you look at Nevada at home, in the last two games that they played, they've dropped it in surprising fashion, to say the least, against Wazoo and then at Loyola Marymount. And in both of those games, they kind of got outclassed in a way. I feel like if there is any kind of a play-up spot here for Steve Alford in this talented Nevada squad, it's going to be against a team that they have respect for and coming off 2 losses. So I'm thinking probably a 20-point winner, and I'm going to lay that 11.5, which is a big number against a good South Dakota State team, in my opinion.
To the credit of South Dakota State, they've looked much better on the post with Oscar Clough than in past years, but you and I both know this is not the same South Dakota State team that we've seen in the past. They are not shooting it from three-point range the way that they have. Zeke Mayo is not walking through that door, but fortunately for myself, you walked through this door to be able to join the podcast today, Rob. You do such amazing work. Take a look at this great game of college basketball. Let the good people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Well, hey, Greg, I always love talking ball with you, and we're going to be talking ball a lot the rest of the year here. But For those who are wanting to follow my bets on a daily basis, you can do so on Twitter/X at RobDFB, and also on my YouTube channel, just my name, Rob Donaldson. And as always, Greg, really appreciate having me on.
It is always great to be able to get Rob aboard. He does such an amazing job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball, and every single time he joins me, lends such great insight. So big thanks to Rob for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time, the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Wednesday as we hit some bank shots. And we're back here, lovely Las Vegas, for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets. Every single time he joins me, he lends such amazing insights. He did so once again today, so a big thanks to Rob for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time, the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Wednesday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GNet_D1, and we are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the games with 3 digits on the rotation first, so these are going to be the bigger games, and the smaller games, those are going to be involving conferences like the America East, the Patriot League, the MEAC, the SWAC, the Southland, the Northeast Conference, the Big South. I believe I've hit all of them. Those are going to be the games at the bottom. So how about if we get things going with 6:43, 6:44 on the card? Notre Dame is going to be playing us at Dartmouth. Dartmouth, an 18-point underdog, and your total is between 140 to 140.5. Did sell my total 135.5. I'm in on the under for Notre Dame. They were playing with some really good offense prior to the Marcus Burton injury. Now that Marcus Burton is injured, I think that they revert back to a little bit more of that team that we saw from a season ago, where they were playing very slowly, they were playing under control. You still have someone in Brandon Shrewsbury that shoots north of 35% from three-point range, is able to give you double figures, but without question, this affects really the entirety of the offense, and it's not even like Notre Dame was playing fast to start with, 266th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Dartmouth has really sped themselves up there in the top 50 in terms of total possessions per game, but well, outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Now, better than what it was a season ago. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's why I'm going to be willing to take the 18 with Dartmouth. Set my line at 17.5 as this team was able to hold in there against UIC a few days ago, and I like what I've been seeing out of the just overall versatility of Ryan Cornish. He last year had a really down year, and he's been able to come back this year. He's supplying the team with about 14.5 points, 3 assists, 2.5 steals, 4.5 rebounds per game. And then Kate Askins, Brandon Mitchell-Day have combined to shoot about 43.5% from three-point range between the two of them, 9 boards per contest. Mitchell-Day at right around 6'7", 6'8", 10 points, 3 assists per game. It's a little bit of a top-heavy team, but they've been able to get a little bit more out of Connor Amundsen. He's come in as a freshman with about 3 assists, 9 points per contest. This team doesn't necessarily turn the ball over a ton, but they do take a lot of inefficient 2-point shots. They shoot 66% at the free throw line. This is a Notre Dame team that does a really good job with their closeouts as well. Even though they have lost 4 out of their last 5 games, it's not really been because of the defense. 70 points or fewer allowed in 3 out of their last 4 games, and if it wasn't for overtime in that Rutgers game, it would be even more impressive. They have allowed fewer than 70 points in regulation in 4 of their last 5 games. So I do think that this game is going to be a little bit more of a slog that Dartmouth is going to be able to hold in there on. So we'll take the 18 with Dartmouth, set my line at 17.5. And with regards to the total, set mine at a 135.5. So I am in on the under as well. 645, 646 on the betting board. This will be another game that I write up. This is going to be UTEP. They're on the road against Louisville. Louisville, a 14.5 point favorite total on this game, 143 to 143.5. I made Louisville just an 8.5 point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to take the points. Big thing for Louisville is that they have been a little bit sloppy with the ball, hovering right around about 249th, 250th in terms of total turnovers on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, you've got a UTEP team that has been absolutely amazing at being able to generate turnovers. Top 3 team in all of college basketball in this regard. Only UCLA has been better than them, and for UTEP, all of a sudden you've got some 3-point shooting with this team as well. They're a top 50 team in terms of their 3-point shooting thus far this season. I don't know how long lasting it's going to be. We saw that last year where they played against a few non-D1 teams, and then things went down the toilet bowl from there. But you've been able to have Ahmad Bynum shoot 63.3% 38% from three-point range. Again, that should be going into a little bit of a spiral, but bringing in Davon Barnes, who last season he was out there in the WAC and was a top-flight contributor over at Tarleton State. He's been able to supply the team with 10.5 points. He's been able to give you about a pair of assists per game, and he's just fit in really well with this defense, as out of their top 6 scorers, 5 of them are generating at least a steal per contest. Of their top 5 scorers, 4 of them at least 1.6 steals per game, including Otis Frazier. Really that heartbeat of this defense, 13.5 points, also gives you a block per contest as well. This team is going to be a little bit bludgeoned on the glass, but with Louisville deal with that injury to Keshawn Pryor, that's going to be a little bit of a place where they're not going to be able to dominate quite as much as they would normally. Chucky Hepburn has been able to give you 14 points, 4.5 assists per game. He's been a nice ringleader for a team that I think is going to shoot better from three-point range when it's all said and done. Right now, Louisville shooting about 28.5% from three-point range. This is a better three-point shooting team than that. Rain Smith, he's been able to shoot 38.5% from three. He's making darn near 3.5 threes per game, but pretty much everyone else on the team has been cold. Terrence Edwards shooting 26% from the outside with his 12 points per contest. Javon Hadley shooting less than 30% from 3, 9.5 points, 7.5 boards out of him. He's going to need to win that battle down low, and I do think that in the end, he is going to be able to do so. And I like the versatility of Noah Waterman, but he hasn't necessarily been able to give you a lot of production to this point. I think that Louisville can have a tough time with the UTEP team as playing some stifling defense. They've been, in terms of on the road, a top 30 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So I do think that they do a rock solid job here. Again, I think that Louisville's three-point shooting extends a little bit, so I set my total 144.5. I'm in on the over, but writing up the points with UTEP. 647, 648 on the betting board. Marshall is going to be on the road against Wright State. Wright State, they hope to be the right side as 5-point favorites on this game. 151.5. I set my number at a 5 as well, so going to be waiting for a little bit of line movement here. I saw a tad bit earlier, 5.5 pop up, and if we can get to a 5.5, that will be my buy point on Marshall. As Marshall does a really good job down low. You've got a pair of guys in Nate Martin along with Obiana Onchile-Killian combining for about 15 or so rebounds per game. Onchile-Killian is a relatively good shot blocker as well. Now, one thing that you're not going to be getting from Marshall is three-point shooting. This team shoots as a collective less than 30% from three-point range. That's been a little bit less than savory, and you just never know what the health status is going to be of one of their main scorers in the backcourt, as well as they have just dealt with Jalen Spear being in and out of the fold all throughout his career. He's already missed a game or two thus far this season after he had Flurry and M last year. Was averaging 16 points per game, but played in less than 20 games. Dezane Mingo has been able to be the main contributor, and he's been able to do a nice job in terms of just giving the team a little bit of a breath of fresh life in the backcourt. 10 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds per game. Not a great three-point shooter, but he's able to dole it out. But again, right now outside of Nate Martin, who's attempting like a half a three per game, you've really got like nobody that's shooting above 30% from three-point range. Meanwhile, you do have a Wright State team that, again, less than efficient on defense, but last year they were outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're now within the top 300, so that's a little bit better, and you've had Brandon Noel really lead the way. He should be able to do a nice job down low against those bigs of Marshall. 20 points, 7.5 boards, and then Alex Hibester, hopefully I said that correctly, the gentleman from Grafton, Wisconsin, named Alex. We'll call him that. He shoots 45% from 3, 16 points per contest. Now, it is a little bit of a top-heavy team. You've only got 4 guys on the roster giving you north of 5.5 points per game, but these guys like Keaton Nolas, Solomon Callahan, guys like this, they've been able to step up a little bit more, giving you some ancillary production, which is what you do like to see for this Wright State team. Wright State is not going to be pressing the issue or anything like that and forcing turnovers, but they do a nice job taking care of the ball themselves. Marshall's calling card over the last few years has been generating turnovers, but that was a little bit more under the D'Antoni era. Now you're under Cornelius Jackson, and this season they've still been solid at generating turnovers. Not quite what we've seen in the past, and this is still a Marshall team that's looking to get up and down. They've been priding themselves a little bit more on hitting the glass, but I do think that there's going to be wide open shots for both teams in this one, as you've got a Wright State team that shoots it very well from three-point range, a Marshall team that does a relatively solid job of guarding from the outside. On the inside, though, they leave themselves very vulnerable, and this is a Marshall team that may turn the ball over a little bit too much themselves. So, interesting circumstance. At a 5.5 or more, I'm willing to take the points with Marshall on that size. And with regards to total, set mine more in that 155 neighborhood, so I'm in on the over. 649, 650 on the betting board. UW Green Bay is going to be playing against UW Milwaukee. Milwaukee is a 6.5 to a 7-point road favorite. Total on this game is 158.5 to a 159. I'm going to be willing to take the points with UW Green Bay. The Fighting Doug Gottlieb should have Anthony Roy back, and that is big because he right now leads all of college basketball in scoring, being able to supply the team with 28 points per game. He got benched for the team's last game. Apparently, he wasn't playing ball the way that Doug Gottlieb wanted him to, and I'm hearing some reports that he might have missed like a shoot-around or something like that as well, so that's a big giant ball of Blacks to try to sift through, but that said, he should be back out there on the floor in this one. Whether or not he's going to be that 28-point per game scorer, that becomes a big question mark, but you do have for this UW-Milwaukee team, a team that's a little bit diminished in terms of their scoring from a season ago, but they've been able to do a really nice job on the glass. JaMychal Stillwell is the reason why. 12.5 points, right around 10.8 rebounds per game. It's a Milwaukee team that they only shoot about 29% from 3, 65% the free throw line with 13.5 turnovers per game. But Themis Folks, he's been able to do a nice job doling out 5 assists, 15 points per game. Love what he's bringing to the table. Kentrell Polian, he's been able to supply the team with 13.5 points, 6 boards, steal and a half per contest. So these guys have been able to do a great job on that front. They've been dealing with Eric Pratt and Faison Fields, 2 of their top contributors that returned from a season ago, dealing with a little bit of injury. But on the flip side for UW Green Bay, outside of Anthony Roy, along with Mr. Marcus Hall, has been solid. 4 rebounds, 13 points per game. You just don't have a whole heck of a lot else. Foster Wonders has chipped in there like 8 points per game. Paul Rudiger is back from a season ago. He's been able to give you about 5.5 points per game. But I mean, with Preston Rudiger, I think I called him Paul. Sorry about that, Mr. Rudiger. But that said, he's already missed a pair of games this season. It's just been pretty ineffective. And I was expecting so much more out of Isaiah Miranda, former top 200 recruit, a guy that stands 7'1". He has seen action in like 4 games thus far this season, and he's given you about a rebound and a half per contest. This has been a big giant flopperoonie for them in terms of getting something down low. But for UW Green Bay, they do shoot north of 80% of the free throw line. They do a solid job of just being able to flow their offense. I do think that with Anthony Roy returning, they should be able to hold in there against the UW Milwaukee team that, again, just not the same offense that we've seen in past years from them. So this is a circumstance where I did something total 161F. UW Green Bay has been well outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So I do think that you get an up and down game and a lot of points up on the board. So I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the over and at 6+ taking those points with Green Bay. 651, 652 on the betting board. Fort Wayne, IPFW, is going to be playing us at IU Indianapolis. IU Indy is an underdog of 14.5 to 15 points. It's on this game between 115.5 to a 151. Semi-line at a 15.5. So 15 is the absolute max I'm willing to lay, but I'm going to be willing to lay the 15 points with Fort Wayne. I do think that this backcourt is still one of the better ones that you're going to find in mid-major college basketball. Rashid Bello is supplying the team with a little bit of everything. He's able to dole it out with a little bit over 3 assists per contest. He gives you right around about a steal and a half, 14.5 points per game, shooting 38% from 3-point range. And then you've got the 4.5 boards, 3.5 assists, and 19 points per game of Jalen Jackson. Fort Wayne does a good job of being able to generate turnovers, and at the same time, they only turn the ball over about 9.5 times per game themselves. They shoot 78.5% of the free throw line, so they do little things well. And I do like the way that this IU Indy team is trending, though. You've got a guy in Sean Craig who down low gives you about 8.5 points, 9 rebounds per game, and then Paul Zilnikas, along Jarvis Walker, a former Fort Wayne player as well. He played for them a few seasons ago. These 2 guys have been able to generate for the team a combined 35 points per game, and Zilnikas, he's been able to shoot 46% from 3-point range for an IU Indy team that they only turn the ball over about 11 times per game. The biggest issue that you do have with IU Indy is that aside from when they play against the likes of Northern Kentucky and company, the defense just has not been there in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. While outside the top 250, this has been a much more efficient Fort Wayne defense, so they themselves do have a few issues there. Do think that this is going to be a game that gets cranked up and down quite a bit more. This is a IU Indy team that is very willing to run. You've got a Fort Wayne team that they themselves have been able to be very proficient with their offenses. This team has been able to get to at least 77 points in 4 out of their last 5 games, so I do think they get a high-scoring affair, but I do think that for Fort Wayne, having Eric Mulder down low, and this is a Fort Wayne team that's well outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate, but I think that he's going to do a nice job down low. 7.5 boards. He's able to give you a steal per contest as well, so has some relatively nice versatility. I think that Fort Wayne, just in this game, outclasses IU Indy, so I'm going to be willing to lay up to 15 points with Fort Wayne. With regards to the total, I'm going to be on the over. I set my total at 155.5. 653, 654 on the betting board. It is Utah Valley, and they play us in North Dakota. North Dakota does find themselves as 8.5 point underdogs. So this game between 144.5 to a 145, and I did set my total at a 145. Personally, between a 144.5 to a 145.5, I'd rather have the 145.5 under rather than the 144.5 over. I'm mostly seeing 145.5 on the board right now, and the main reason why is that you have a North Dakota team that's just not very reliable with their offense outside of Trayson Eaglestaff. Eaglestaff has been great. He's supplied the team with 18.5 points per game, shooting 35% from 3-point range, but the team has turned the ball over about 13 times per contest. You don't have a single guy in the roster that's giving you multiple assists per game. Amir Kulijovic. He's starting to pick it up down low. He's giving you 6.5 rebounds per game, 7+ boards each of the last 5 contests. So like what he's bringing to the table. But last year he shot 45.5% from 3-point range. That is down to less than 20% from 3 this season. And for Utah Valley, they were one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in all of college basketball last year. And it's gotten a little bit better this year, but they are still shooting a pretty paltry 30.5% from 3-point range, but they should be able to dominate this game down low with the Welling brothers, as you've been able to get 6.5 boards, 12.5 points per game out of Carter Welling, who's shooting north of 40% from 3-point range at 6'10". They come in from the Zot UC Irvine Anteaters, and then his brother Hayden Welling, he's 6'9". He's able to shoot 35% from 3, 7.5 points per game, and they're really your main outside shooters for this team, as you've got Dom Nelson, who's able to give you 13 points, 6 boards. He's been rock solid, and for this Utah Valley team, each other top 5 scores are also giving you at least 4.3 rebounds per game, and you've got a nice facilitation. Trevin Leonard, he's been able to give you about 4.5 assists, a little bit over 2 steals per game, though the team, they themselves do turn the ball over about 14 times per game. Good news is they go up against a North Dakota team that really doesn't force the issue in terms of generating turnovers. Now, it is a North Dakota team that defensively, they have been poor. They have given up at least 76 points in each of their last 4 games, 73 plus in each of their last 5, but Utah Valley has really had a struggle to be able to put points up on the board themselves, 63 or fewer in each of their last 3 games. So do think that this game gets bogged down just a little bit more because Utah Valley turns the ball over a little bit too much. North Dakota really has no facilitation whatsoever, and neither of these teams are necessarily looking to run it and gun it, so I'm in on the under. But that said, with Utah Valley, I think that they should be able to dominate the glass, especially with the way that Kulijovic has been coming on a little bit more in terms of his rebounding, but he doesn't necessarily have a lot of help around him on the glass. So set my number at 9. I'm willing to lay the 8.5 with Utah Valley, and with regards to total, set mine at a 145. So here at the 145.5, in on the under. 655, 656 on the betting board. It is Fresno State. They hit the road. They're facing off against BYU, and BYU does find themselves as 25 to 26 point favorites. Total on this game, it is 155, and this is a game where I'm going to be taking a look at the points with Fresno State. I did set them as a 21.5 point underdog. While BYU has been a drastically better team at home rather than on the road, it is a Fresno State team that I think is doing for a little bit of positivity in terms of their outside shooting, as this team continues to shoot below 30% from 3-point range. I don't think that this is some sort of an amazing team or anything like that, but they did bring in some highly regarded junior college transfers, and Amir Uyagard, who's been able to give you 14 points. He's only shooting 24% from 3, and as a whole, the team is shooting 39% from the floor, 26% from 3. Again, I have no idea why they hired Vance Wahlberg on as their coach, but Zion Collins, he's been able to supply the team with some good versatility. He missed a game or 2 earlier in the season, but 14.5 points, 5 boards, 3.5 assists, 2.5 steals per game. I really like what he's able to bring to the table for this team, and when he's been out there, the team has been a whole heck of a lot more competitive. They've lost a lot of games that have been relatively close. That double overtime game against Cal Baptist, they held in there against Washington State, and he's been a big part of both of those. Down low, they're going to lose a battle, but Elijah Price at 6'9" has been able to give you 8.5 rebounds per game. For BYU, you do have someone like Ikebukita, who's able to give you 9.5 rebounds per game. Fusani Traore has always been a really good low post presence for the team, as he's been able to supply the team with about 7 boards, 12.5 points per game, and Igor Demeen along with Richie Saunders, their combined shoot 39% from 3, both giving individually 13 points, 4.5 boards per game, while Demeen has been able to give you 6 assists to about 2.5 turnovers per game. It's a BYU team that they're a solid shooting team at about 35% from 3, but what you're going to be able to get out of Kenyon Catchings is very hit or miss. He's averaging about 10.5 points per game, but feels like this guy is either going to erupt or he's going to crater. He has given the team a combined 10 points over the last 2 games after he had a combined 31 in the previous 2. So it has been very touch and go with him. You do have some good depth with someone like Muat Mahaku. Really can't even get out there on the floor after he was a big part of that Rutgers team a few seasons ago. Trayvon Nell has seen a little bit of a lesser role, but he's still been able to contribute for the team as well. But for Fresno State, I do think that they're going to go northward a little bit more with their 3-point shooting, and this is a Fresno State team that is really playing an up and down style as well. So this is a game where I set a higher total. I set my total at 159.5. I do think that BYU going to be able to put it on Fresno State, but I do think that Fresno State sees some positivity with their 3-point shooting, so I'm going to be in on this total over, and I do like catching 25 here with Fresno State. This will be another game that I write up. This is 657, 658 on the card. Cal Baptist, they're on the road. They're against San Diego State. San Diego State, a 15 to 15.5 point favorite. Totals between 135.5 to a 136. Set my line at 12. I'm going to be willing to take the points with this Cal Baptist team. They've been able to do a relatively solid job with regards to their offense, going up against the San Diego State team that is outside the top 200 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, for San Diego State. Nick Boyd has been able to do a great job giving the team 12.5 points per game. He has been a little bit banged up at Milesburg, already missed a game this season. I know that he's dealt with injuries, but looks like he's getting back into peak form with 9+ points in pretty much every game that he's played in the last 5. You've got a team, though, in San Diego State that's not been able to get the ball in down low as much. They're shooting about 36.5% from 3-point range. The outside shooting has been good, and Jared Coleman-Jones at 6'10", 7.5 points, 5 boards, shoots 37.5% from 3-point range, but being able to get those easy buckets around the rim has been a little bit of a challenge for this team, as they've done a nice job as well of not turning the ball over a ton, about 10.5 turnovers per game. Their biggest forte, though, is the block shots. They've been able to get 3.4 blocks per game out of Magoon Guaf. He's getting more block shots than he is rebounds. I don't think I've ever seen that before, but he is doing that right now for them. But I mean, Cal Baptist and San Diego State are playing relatively even up on the glass, and Kendall Coleman, I think, is going to be able to keep Cal Baptist lively on the glass. 9 boards, 14 points per game. He's right now shooting north of 50% from 3. That should see a fall off, but Cal Baptist has been very smart with the ball, only about 10 turnovers per game. They should see a little bit of a tick up with their 30.5% 3-point shooting. So while Kendall Coleman goes downward with his 3-point shooting, someone like Adami Daniels, who last year shot 36.5% from 3, shooting 26.5% this season, that should be able to rise for him. And for Daniels, he has been cooking recently. 15+ points each out of the team's last 5 games overall for the season, giving north of 21 points per game. Now you need these guys like a Martell Williams and company to be able to step up a little bit more. Brantley Stevenson, so they've been able to give you about 4.5 points per game. But for San Diego State, I just don't think that they have the firepower to be able to win this game by this large of a margin. And Cal Baptist has been able to hold up relatively well on the defensive side of things as well. Certainly not quite on par with San Diego State. San Diego State still a top 40 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and that's a big reason why I did set my total at 134. I'm in on the under. You've got a Cal Baptist team that, while they're starting to play a little bit faster this season, they're still not necessarily a super duper up-tempo team. But that said, I do think that with Cal Baptist, what they're able to do on the glass with Coleman and company, going to be able to keep them in this game. So I'm willing to take the points with Cal Baptist and wrote that up, and I'm in on the under. This will be the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we get the extra games. 659, 660. It is South Dakota State on the road against Nevada. Nevada is an 11 to an 11.5 point favorite. Totals between 139 to a 140, and for Nevada, set them as a 10.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take 11 plus here with South Dakota State. This is a new look South Dakota State team. This is not the same team that we've seen in past seasons, as they're playing much more through the post, as Oscar Clough has been in the top 5 in all of college basketball with regards to rebounds. 11.7 rebounds, 18.5 points per game. Caitlin Gary has been able to give you about 2.5 assists per game, but for South Dakota State, they shoot as collective only about 31.5% from 3-point range. Traditionally, this is one of your best 3-point shooting team in all of college basketball. Main guy in terms of your 3-point shooting has been Joe Saylor. He's been able to shoot about 35.5% from 3, but he's been missing for a little bit of time thus far this season. Should be good to go in this one in their last game against Eastern Washington at 18 points, so it looks like he's back and firing all cylinders. But that said, you're not getting a lot of someone like a Matthew Morris, who's been able to give you about 8 or so points per contest. Owen Larson has stepped in, and he's been versatile. 2.5 assists, steal per game, about 8 points per game. Again, shooting about 33% from 3-point range. Meanwhile, you do have a Nevada team that has been pretty shut down with regards to their defense when they've been at home. On the road, it's been a much different story, but like what you're getting out of Nick Davidson, 14.5 points, 7 boards per contest, and then Kobe Sanders has been a do-it-all guy in the backcourt. 4 boards, 4 assists, 16 points per game while shooting 56.5% from 3-point range, but Nevada got off to an unreal 3-point shooting start to begin the season. Now they're back down to about 40.5% 3-point shooting, which I think it'll go down a little bit further, but Xavier DeSalle, he's shooting 40% from 3. That'll be a mainstay. Has always been a good 3-point shooter, whether it be at Fresno State, whether it be at Wyoming. But that said, for this Nevada team, outside of Davidson and Sanders, really don't have anyone else that's giving you north of 8.5 points per game, as you've gotten about 8.5 points, 4 boards out of Brandon Love, who's coming from Texas State. Do like his game. It's a Nevada team that they do the little things well. They only turn the ball over about 11 times per game, but typically it's a really good free throw shooting team as well. They're shooting just 68% at the free throw line, so I do think that with Nevada, just with their collective, they should be able to get the job done, but we've seen them get hit a little bit of an offensive rut, 64 points or fewer in 3 out of their last 4 games. It is a South Dakota State team that they're still not shy of being able to put up points. They've been much more efficient with regards to their 2-point shots than they have been in past years, so I did set my total to where I'm going to be in on this total over. I set my total at 142.5, but you're at 11 plus, going to be willing to take those points with South Dakota State. State, and now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
3 of 6-5-19, 3 of 6-5-20. Another game that'll right up. Norfolk State is on the road against Baylor. Baylor, a 25.5 point favorite total on this game. It is 143, and with Norfolk State, made up a 23.5 point underdog. I'm going to be willing to take the points. Now for Baylor, they are top in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, specifically at home. When they're on the road, that very much does deteriorate, but they get to go up against a Norfolk State team that's well outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but Brian Moore Jr. has been able to give you more. He's supplying the team with 20 points, 2.5 assists, currently shooting a blistering 64.5% from three-point range. That'll no doubt see a fall off, but that's it with Baylor. Got no Chad Omier, give you 15.5 points, 9.5 boards, steal per contest. It's a Baylor team that as a whole, they shoot less than 35% from three-point range at home, dating back to last year, by the way, and then going into this year as well, shooting north of 42% from three-point range when they are at home. VJ Edgecombe returned in their last game against Abilene Christian after he was missing for a game or so. 11.5 points, 5.5 boards, 2.5 steals. Really good versatility there on a block and half per contest as well. Jeremy Roach continues to shoot 38+% from three with 13 points per game. And Jaden Nunn, 53% three-point shooter, 13 points per game for a Baylor team that really does a nice job, not really turning the ball over a ton. This is a Norfolk State team that sometimes they gamble a little bit too much for turnovers. They leave themselves a bit, shall we say, vulnerable around the perimeter as Hofstra completely lit them up a few days ago for 80-plus points. And for Norfolk State, just don't have a lot down low. That can be sometimes a kryptonite for Baylor, though Omier has been able to really do a nice job polishing that up. But right now you've got Jalen Darden, who's giving you about 4.5 rebounds per game. Same goes for Jalen Myers as well. But I do think that Norfolk State, they're going to have just enough in the backcourt with Christian Ings being able to give you 4 assists. He's always been a career about 40% three-point shooter, right now 50% three-point shooter, to remain lively, and I think that this becomes a very efficient game for both offenses. So my total 149.5, I'm in on the over, and I'm willing to take north of 25 here in Norfolk State. 3-6-5-21, 3-6-5-22, another game that'll right up. Long Island, it's a road face-off against UMass. UMass is a 15.5 point favorite total on this game. It is 152.5. I'll be writing up the over. I set my total more around a 156 with Long Island and also UMass Lowell. Both of these teams are outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and you've got a UMass Lowell team that's looking to run. UMass Lowell has been in the top 60 in terms of total possessions per game. Quincy Mincy has done a nice job supplying the team with 17 points per game. Now, they do need to clean up the turnovers, about 15 turnovers per contest, but this team is shooting 38% from three-point range. Yuri Covington, along with Martin Somerville, both of these guys have combined to shoot a little bit north of 40% from three-point range. Between the two of them, it's about 25.5 points per game out of those two guys. Max Brooks should be able to own the paint. He's been able to supply the team with 8 boards, a little bit over 2 blocks per contest. I did set my line at 14. I'm going to be willing to take the 15.5 here with Long Island because they've got an explosive scorer of their own in Malachi Davis, who comes in from Arizona State, was a standout at the junior college level, 17.5 points per contest. Now, they've been without Brent Davis for quite a while. He's really their top guy in terms of generating turnovers, which means that it should make life a little bit easier on the UMass Lowell offense. You've also been able to have the coach's son, Terrell Strickland, do a nice job of being able to provide versatility. 9.5 points, 5 boards, 5.5 assists per game, but at 6 feet tall, he's right now one of the top rebounders for this team. You've also been able to get 5.5 points and 5.5 boards out of Shadrach Lassou, who comes over from the country of Canada, but I do think that for Long Island, they've got enough in the backcourt to be able to hold in there. They take a little bit of better care of the ball, and this UMass Lowell team has been very willing to give it up from the outside, though they've been pretty stout on the inside as well. You've got a UMass Lowell team as well that's gotten to at least 80 points for their last 5 games. You've got a Long Island team that has given up at least 75 points in 3 of their last 4 games against D1 competition. So, circumstance where I'm going to be in on this over, so my total 156, and we'll take 15 plus here with Long Island. 3-6-5-23, 3-6-5-24. East Carolina is going to be playing us in North Alabama. North Alabama is a underdog of anywhere between 7 to 8 points in your total on this game. It is 139 to 139.5. So my line at 6.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with North Alabama. North Alabama doing a nice job of just getting their backcourt to fire on all cylinders. Not quite shooting the same way from three-point range as they have in past years, but I do think that that's going to be coming along as they've got the benefit of a boomerang transfer in Daniel Ortiz. 2 seasons ago, when supplying the team with 14 plus points per contest, was really one of their top scorers. Has come back this year and hasn't quite looked like himself after a year at UAB. 10 points per game, shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range. North Alabama's still been very clean with the ball, only turned the ball about 10 times per contest, and they've been able to generate some turnovers as well. The team is giving you about 9.5 steals per game, with Shakari Lane headlining things with 1.7 steals, 15.5 points, 3.5 assists per game. You've been having Dallas Hull out of the fold for much of the season, has only played in 3 games thus far this season, so that's been a little bit of an issue for them along the painted area. But Cornelius Williams, who has come in from Western Carolina, he's been able to do a nice job of masking that, giving the team 10 points, 8 boards at about 6'9". On the flip side, you've got an East Carolina team that I love what RJ Felton brings to the table. He's leading the team in darn near everything. 19 points, 6.5 boards, 2.5 assists, shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point range, while Cam Hayes has been able to give you an assist-to-turnover ratio that is north of 3. East Carolina outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game, but they've been executing quite well with having all 3 of their top scorers, Felton being one of them. Throw in there as well CJ Walker and Jordan Riley. I'll give you at least 6 rebounds per game, but it's a little bit of a top-heavy team. You could use someone like a Jan Farrell, who comes in from St. Bonaventure to give you more than 5 points per game. Has been able to shoot about 40% from 3-point range, and for East Carolina, they don't get careless with the ball. They only turn the ball over about 10.5 times per game, but they're also shooting about 30% from 3-point range. That's a little bit of an issue. This is a North Alabama team that, just given the circumstances, they have been taking quite a few more shots from the outside. This is an East Carolina team that's pretty stout with regards to their perimeter defense, but this is also an East Carolina team that's not going to knock your socks off on offense, and it's actually been scoring about 6 points fewer per 100 possessions when they've been at home rather than when they've been on the road. So circumstance where I set my total at a 140.5, I'm going to be willing to take those points with North Alabama. And with regards to the total, I did just have just enough wiggle room for the over as well. I do think that North Alabama going to get their offense cranked up. I do think that they're going to allow some open looks to an East Carolina team that they themselves have been able to get to at least 68 points in 4 of their last 5 games. So in on the over and the points with North Alabama, 36-5-25, 36-5-26. UT Martin is on the road against Alabama State, and Alabama State is a 6 to a 7-point favorite. Your total on this game, it is 147, and with UT Martin, I did set them as a 3.5-point underdog. I'm going to be willing to take the points. Alabama State has had a little bit of a renaissance this year. Year in and year out, they have been a bottom 25 team in terms of their overall field goal shooting percentage, and they've been able to do a nice job of being much more efficient. You've got a guy that does it all in terms of the coach's son, TJ Madlock. He is the main point guard and the son of Tony Madlock. 12.5 points, 5.5 boards, 3.5 assists, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range. But how about the way that Amar Knox has been able to step up, give this team 15.5 points per game, be a top-flight scorer for them. You've also been able to have about 15 points per game and 39.5% three-point shooting as well out of CJ Hines, who has stepped up in a big way in the backcourt. And then for Alabama State, they are only turned the ball over about 9.5 times per game, so they're keeping things relatively clean there. You don't necessarily have a ton down low for this bunch. You have not been able to have really anyone other than Micah Octave, who's only played in 2 games as far as the season. He's still with injury. Give you north of the 5.5 rebounds per game that you do get out of Madlock. And this is a UT Martin team that is a top 200 team with regards to their rebound rate. That's what I think is going to be able to keep them so lively in this game. You've got a guy in Vladimir Zaldize. He comes over from the Big West. Before that, he played at East Carolina under this very same coaching staff. He's been able to give you about 8 rebounds per game, a little bit undersized at 6'7", but a good frame. He's been able to pull in there a bunch of good hard rebounds for the team. And then you've been able to have Jose Grullon. He's been able to give you 18 points, 4 boards, been the main scorer, shooting 39.5% from 3. It's been much needed because UT Martin right now shooting 27.5% from the outside. You need a little bit more scoring pop from someone like an Afan Trinka, who comes over from Bosnia and Herzegovina. He's been able to give about 2.5 assists per game. And you look at this UT Martin team, they've got a lot of junior college transfers on this team, a lot of guys from East Florida because that's where their coach and Jeremy Ballard comes from, but they also have a lot of international men of mystery that are sort of trying to come together, and we've been noticing the defense being relatively rock solid. Offense has been leaving quite a bit of something to be desired. Meanwhile, you've got an Alabama State team that's now given up at least 77 points each of their last 4 games, 75 plus in each of their last 5. But so it's a situation of something's got to give. I did set my total at a 147.5. I do think that Alabama State continues to play games that are relatively up and down, and they're just very clean with their offense, but they leave something to be desired down low. So I'm in on the over, and I'm willing to take those points with UT Martin. 36-5-27, 36-5-28. Fairleigh Dickinson hopes to be fairly priced as they are on the road. They're facing off against Villanova. Villanova, pretty sizable favorites here. You're going to be laying between 28.5 to 29.5 points with them. Throw on this game between 150 to 151.5. Another game that I'll be writing up, and I'm going to be writing up the over. I set my total at 155. We got a Fairleigh Dickinson team that, let's call it what it is, their defense leaves something to be desired. They're outside the top 350 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They allow opponents to grab a rebound off of their missed shots on north of 36 56% of their missed shots. They're outside the top 350 with that regard as well. They do have a nice scorer in Terrence Brown, though, that I think does just enough to be able to keep them lively. I did set my spread at a 25, so I'm going to be willing to take the points. With Terrence Brown, he's been rock solid for this Fairleigh Dickinson team. 21.5 points, 6.5 boards, 3 assists, shooting 37% from three-point range. And for the issues that Fairleigh Dickinson has had, they've gotten to at least 74 points themselves in each of their last 5 games. So credit where it is due. But outside of Brown, you just need a little bit more help from some of these other guys. Joel Emmanuel is pretty much a lone guy that is back from that team that knocked off Purdue a few years ago in the NCAA tournament. 10.5 points per contest, shooting 39% from 3. And Fairleigh Dickinson as a whole, I recognize that some of this is warped by the fact that they played against non-D1 opponents, but they're shooting 38.5% from three-point range. They've been able to get a little bit of rebounding out of Cameron Tweedy, who's been able to give you about 5 points, 3.5 boards per contest. Dylan Jones, as a 6'5" non-D1 transfer, has stepped in. He shot 34% from 3, 12.5 points per game with 11 plus in each of the last 5 games. But Eric Dixon is right now number 2 in all of college basketball in points per game. This guy has been an absolute menace for Villanova. 25.5 points, 6.5 boards, shooting 54% from 3 for a Villanova team that is right now in the top 20 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, shooting 41.5% from 3. That's with Wooga Poplar being relatively ordinary. 13 points, 6.5 boards, shooting 34.5% from 3-point range. I could see those numbers going upward. You've been able to get really good production out of the Penn transfer and Tyler Perkins as well, shooting north of 40% from 3, 8.5 points per game. And Jabari Brinkus is just running really good, efficient offense. 5 assists to about 2 turnovers per game. He's shooting north of 50% from 3-point range as well. For Fairleigh Dickinson, because they don't necessarily go up against a physically imposing team in Villanova, I think that they're going to be able to do just enough to hold in there. Do think that this is going to be a game that's going to be a little bit more up and down. Villanova looking to play very slow and controlled. Fairleigh Dickinson looking to gun it. I think that Villanova going to be very willing to be able to take quite a few shots. They've put up 75 plus in 3 of their last 5. And I do think that in the end, Villanova is putting up a big number. So going to be willing to take the points here with Fairleigh Dickinson. Set my line at a 25 and writing up the over. Set my total at 155. 306.529. 306.530. St. John's plays us to Bryant. Bryant is a 21.5 to a 22-point dog. Totals between 160 to 160.5. Made my total a 161.5. I do like the over. Bryant has been one of the more up-tempo teams in all of college basketball over the last few seasons. And for St. John's, it does feel like they still have a few things that they need to work out in terms of the kinks. So I did set my line at a 19.5. I'm going to be willing to take 20 plus here with Bryant. It's a Bryant unit that has been able to have Earl Timberlake bring sexy back. 15 plus points, 8 plus boards, 4 assists. Like, the guy is absolutely everywhere for this team, but when it comes to St. John's, I know that they've been dealing with a few injuries in the backcourt. You've had Kadari Richmond be a little bit touch and go, but it feels like he's really come into his own over the last few days. He's been able to give the team great versatility, 5 assists, 10.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. Shooting actually better from 3-point range than he did over at Seton Hall last season as well. And Tavion Smith, after he missed a game, he's back, 6 boards, 5 assists, 9 points per contest, with RJ Lewis being that main go-to scorer. And I think that St. John's, when it's all said and done, they shoot a little bit better than the 33.2% from 3-point range that they are right now. And right now, Zuby Ejiofor has really been able to come into his own down low, especially from a defensive standpoint. 2.5 blocks, 13.5 points per game, and St. John's should be able to dominate that aspect of things. But Rafael Pinzon has just been a nice go-to scorer. One of the best, I guess you call it, mid-major scorers in all of college basketball. 19.5 points, 2.5 assists. Right now, shooting north of 50% from 3. Bryant as a whole, they're shooting 38.5% from the outside. For the tempo that they play, 12.5 turnovers per game, that's not necessarily too bad either. They go up against the St. John's unit that it has been very touch and go in terms of their defense, to say the least. St. John's right now about 18th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And this Bryant team, they've been pretty solid themselves. They're within the top 175 with that regard. On the road, a top 100 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. You've got Connor Withers, who's able to give you about 5.5 boards per contest. Keyshawn Mitchell, 7 points, 6 boards, like what these guys are able to bring to the table. But I do think that both of these teams are going to be able to knock down quite a few shots. I do think that St. John's really starting to be able to find that next gear with regards to their offense. 77 plus points in 4 of their last 5 games. We've got a Bryant team that they themselves have gone to at least 75 in each of their last 5. I think that this is going to be an up and down game. St. John's very willing to fly with teams, so I'm in on the over. And at 20 plus, I'm going to be willing to take those points with Bryant. 306-531, 306-532. It is Delaware State playing us NJIT. NJIT is a underdog of 2 to 3 points. Tallest game between 139 to 141. And with NJIT, I did set them as an underdog of 5.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay with Delaware State. Delaware State has had quite a few injuries that they've been dealing with, and they've just lost a lot in the transfer portal in general, but they're going to have the best player out there on the floor, and that would be Martez Robinson. Robinson has done a nice job supplying it all for the team. 16.5 points, right around about 5 to 6 rebounds per game, 2 plus assists per game, and Kasim Watson has stepped up as a nice sort of post presence for the team, be able to pull in there about 6.5 rebounds per game. Olsen Andrews, the transfer from Illinois State, has also been able to provide a nice post presence as well. He's been able to put on their 5 boards, a steal per game, so he's able to give you a little bit of this and that. And Corey Perkins, after he was limited just 3 games a season ago, he's been a nice main facilitator with about 3.5 assists per game for a Delaware State team that they turned the ball over 12 times per contest. Delaware State not necessarily pushing tempo, but they're not necessarily a slow team either. And for NJIT, Drake Francis has been great. He's given the team 20.5 points per contest. He's given out 3.5 assists, 4 boards per game. You just don't have a lot of help around him. Tim Moore has been able to give you 9 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, and when he's been firing all cylinders, Sean Robinson has been able to supply some good production as well with about 12.5 points per game, but these are the only 3 guys on the roster I give you north of 5 points per game. Levi Llewell, when he's been out there, as he's been missing for the last few games, he's able to give you 4.5 boards per game as well, but this is an NJIT team that plays at a lower tempo. They turn the ball over 13.5 times per contest, outside the top 275, both in terms of points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. Does feel like things are starting to come together for this team a little bit more, but for Delaware State, the way that their offense has been able to hum a little bit more as well, getting to at least 77 plus points in 3 of their last 4 games. They played against a little bit of better competition at night's cover on the road against Texas. Recognize that they lose that game by 22, but hey, that's much more than what NJIT can say, as they lost by north of 30 when they went up against Villanova. I do think that with Delaware State, having a guy as versatile as Robinson and being able to control the glass allows them to be able to get the job done. So I'm going to be willing to lay up to 5 with Delaware State. With regards to this total, semi at a 145.5. You got a pair of teams that have been a little bit lax with regards to their defense and are starting to come into their own offensively with some good top flight scores on both sides. So looking at the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Delaware State. 36-5-33, 36-5-34. Another game that I'll write up as Maine is on the road against Duquesne. Duquesne is a 6.5 point favorite. Total between 131.5 to a 132. I'm going to be writing up Maine. I set them as just a 2.5 point underdog. This is not the Duquesne team that we remember from past years, as for Duquesne, they have been not necessarily great defensively outside the top 175 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They just don't have that guy they're able to go to with regards to their offense as well. They're outside the top 200 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They haven't necessarily been able to get a ton down low as they bring in Deshaun Corbett, who last year was over at Chicago State. He's been able to give you about 4.5 or so rebounds per game, but this Maine team has been a top 140 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, top 35 team in terms of generating turnovers as well. AJ Lopez has been that top scorer for them with 14 points, shooting 43.5% from 3. Maine has their deficiencies on offense as well. They are well outside the top 200 in terms of points scored per possession as well, but they do the little things well. They only turn the ball over 11 times per game. They shoot as a collective 81% at the free throw line. As a matter of fact, their top 4 scorers all shooting at least 85% of the charity stripe, including Keon Burns, who's able to give you 13 points, 6.5 rebounds per game, and then Kellen Tynes, 2 years ago, led all of college basketball in terms of steals per game. He has been able to give the team 3 steals, 5 assists, 12 points per game. Love the way that he's filling it up. And then they've got an Appalachian State transfer in Christopher Mantis, who I think has a lot of upside. 8 points, 3.5 boards. He's able to give you versatility at 6'7", shooting 36% from 3-point range. Getting him integrated in the offense, I think, is so big against the Duquesne team that the backcourt just still seems to be a little bit disjointed. Trey Dinkins has been able to supply the team with about 11.5 points per game, but you've got a lot of guys that just really don't know their role right now, and they just don't execute very well. They're shooting 30% from 3. They're shooting 63% the free throw line. Maine is doing those little things well. I think that helps them hold in there. So set my line at 2.5. I'm going to be writing up Maine with the points, and I did set my total 130.5. Maine, well outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game, doing a rock solid job on defense against the Duquesne offense, leaving a lot to be desired. So I'm going to be in on this total under, and I'm writing up the points with Maine. 36-5-35, 36-5-36. Pittsburgh is going to be playing us Eastern Kentucky, and Eastern Kentucky does find themselves as a underdog of 18.5 to 20 points. Totals between 149.5 to a 150. Set my line at 16.5. I'm going to be willing to take those points. It has been an almighty struggle for the ACC over the last few weeks, and I don't think that involves Pittsburgh. I recognize that they got bludgeoned when they played against Mississippi State. That said, I still like what they're able to get in their backcourt, as you've got Jalen Lowe along with Ishmael Leggett, who have been able to combine for north of 34 points per contest. Both of these guys shooting in the high 30s from 3-point range. Zach Austin has been able to give you a block and a half per contest. Recognize that they don't have the man that's so nice that they named him twice in Federico. That said, they're still doing a solid job with regards to versatility. Guillermo Diaz-Graham is someone that's saying 7 feet tall. He's been able to give the team a little bit of versatility as well. But then you take a look at the flip side, and I think that Eastern Kentucky is going to be able to hold in there because they year in and year out do a good job of being able to generate turnovers. They aren't quite the same same team on the post as they were a season ago. As a season ago, they were just absolutely dominating teams with having the nation's leader in shot blocks, Isaiah Kozart, but you've been able to have guys that have been able to fill in and have been able to do a nice job with Devontae Bland, who it feels like has been in college for about 100 years, supplying the team with 3.5 assists, 6 boards, 16 points per game. He just does a bit of everything. Major Wall has been able to come in, give the team 6 boards. He's able to generate a steal and a half per contest, as well. It's a Eastern Kentucky team that leaves a little bit of something to be desired with their outside shooting, 31.5% three-point shooting team as a collective. But last year, this was one of the worst teams in all of college basketball with regards to their three-point shooting defense. And is it perfect this year? No, but it is much more improved. I think that's because you bring in someone like a Jordan Crawford, who was over at College of Charleston last season. He's stepped in. He's been able to give the team 9 points per contest, shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range. And Eastern Kentucky as a whole, right now they're ranking about 182nd in all of college basketball, allowing opponents to shoot 33% from three-point range. You got a Pittsburgh team that they've been a little bit shaky from the outside, certainly have been able to do a nice job on the inside. They don't turn the ball over a ton, but I do think that Eastern Kentucky generates just enough turnovers to be able to hold in this game. I do think that this turns into a bit more of an up-and-down game. So semi-total 152.5. I do like the over, and I like the points with Eastern Kentucky. 3 of 6-5-37, 3 of 6-5-38. It is Arkansas Pine Bluff on the road against Louisiana Monroe, and Monroe does find themselves as 9.5 to 10-point favorites. Totals between 154.5 to a 155. I'm going to take this total under. I set my total at a 151.5. Fully recognize that you've got two less than savory defenses. Louisiana Monroe outside the top 250 turns points allowed on a per possession basis. Pine Bluff, they are ahead of Mississippi Valley State for dead last in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. But this Arkansas Pine Bluff offense also not getting out their own way as well with Pine Bluff. In terms of points scored per possession, they're about 323rd in all of college basketball. And you just don't really have a lot from the outside with this Louisiana Monroe team. They are 343rd. In terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they've had Therese Watson be able to supply them with 10 points, right around about 3 assists per contest. But I mean, this team's forte is really down low with someone like an Edu Diodero, who's been able to give you 4 or 5 rebounds per game. Joseph Nagopat has been able to give you a few rebounds per game as well. So these guys have been able to hold up there, but they don't really give you a lot in terms of backcourt. Meanwhile, you've got a Arkansas Pine Bluff team I think is going to be able to hold in there with their guard play, as you've had Dante Sawyer be able to step up, give the team 12 points per contest. Christian Moore is a double-figure scorer who's been able to do 4.5 assists per game for Pine Bluff. Need to clean up the 16 turnovers per game, but they're now shooting closer to about 32% from three-point range. And the Monmouth transfer in Clement Vugel. He's 6'9", has a bit of versatility, 10 points, 5 boards per contest. Was limited in the team's last game, though. He only played 8 minutes against Central Arkansas. I think that was more foul trouble than anything else, though. And then you've got Caleb Jones helping out the backcourt as well. Just 6 points, 2.5 assists per game, and is now shooting 40% from three-point range. With Robert Lewis currently being out due to injury, that should allow Louisiana Monroe to be able to win the battle down low. And Jalen Bolden has been a nice 13-point per game scorer, but Louisiana Monroe just has had a tough time being able to score in general. This team, I don't think, has gotten past the 70-point plateau against a Division I opponent all season long. I think that they could get past 70 here, but just too high of a total with how these two offenses have been playing. So set my line at 9.5. I'm willing to take double figures with Pine Bluff, and with regards to this total, in on the under. 306-539, 306-540. Another game that I'll write up. Colgate is on the road against Kentucky. Kentucky 30 to 31 point favorites, and total on this game is 157 to 158. I set Kentucky as a 26.5 point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to take the 30 plus here with Colgate. I'm right there with Rob Donaldson. I do think that this is a little bit of a buy low spot on Colgate, and part of the reason why I'm willing to take Colgate is that I'm also going to be writing up the under. Semi-total 152.5. Colgate is not what they have been on offense in the past. Currently outside the top 275 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and typically for Colgate, they've got a go-to guy that sort of stuffs the stat sheet. Braden Smith was that last year. We remember a few years ago that was Tucker Richardson. If you want to go back even further, Jordan Burns was really the first of those guys. They just don't have that guy this year, especially with having Jeff Woodyard currently dealing with an injury. He's been out the last 6 games. He was giving the team about 5.5 boards per contest. You've been able to have Jalen Cox give you a bit of versatility, but he's not that go-to scorer. About 9 points, 5 boards, 3.5 assists per game while shooting less than 15% from three-point. You think that that's going to go northward a little bit, but Colgate is really controlling things, playing slow, under, shall we say, not a lot of duress outside the top 320 in terms of total possessions per game. Kentucky is looking to gun it a bit more, and they have been so efficient on offense. Top 10 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. You had 6 different guys that are giving you north of 10 points per contest, Amari Williams should be able to win that battle down low. 10 points, 9 boards, 2 blocks per contest. And then Ortega away, shooting 36% from 3, 15.5 points per game. Like, we thought it was going to be more like Jackson Robinson and guys like that were going to be the main contributors in the backcourt. Kobe Bryant is right now shooting 55% from 3. Do think that goes downward a little bit. And you do want to note that Lamont Butler missed the last game against Gonzaga. It seems like he's going to be out for a while, so he is not going to be in the fold. That means that you're going to be seeing a little bit more of the ancillary guards with Kirk Kriisa also getting injured in that game against Gonzaga. And he's been able to do a nice job of being able to run the offense as well. Not much of a scorer, but was giving up 4 assists per game, so your main 2 ball handlers are now out. Do you go to away a little bit more to be able to dole out the ball? Are you going to be perhaps looking to someone a little bit less known, like perhaps you bring in the freshman and Travis Perry to be able to give you a little bit more facilitation as well? That's a little bit of a question mark for Kentucky. I think that's going to be hurting them a little bit more in this spot. I do think that this game gets slowed down, so going to be willing to take those points with Colgate with the backcourt injuries of Kentucky and riding up that under. We wrap things up with 3 of 6, 541, 3 of 6, 542. It is Louisiana playing us to Southeast Louisiana. Southeast Louisiana is a 2.5 to a 3-point dog. Total on this game between 143.5 to a 144. Louisiana is still looking for their first cover of the year, and I don't think that they get it here. I set them as just a 1.5 point favorite. I'm not going to go money line on Southeast Louisiana, but being able to get 2.5 to 3 points, I'm going to be willing to take it just because this Louisiana team was overvalued coming into the year. I mean, that includes myself. I've bet on them a few times, and I have been nipped in the bud every single time by it, but for Louisiana, they just don't have that guy in the backcourt that's able to run the offense. Like Kentrell Garnett has always been a nice off-the-ball scorer, 40+% three-point shooter throughout his career. Right now, he's given out about 2.5 assists, 9 points per game, and he's the main distributor for the team. You've had the gentleman from Morocco, Mustafa El Motakil, who's been able to give you 11.5 points, 4 boards per contest, but you don't have a lot down low either, as Kobe Julian was doing so much for this team. Now you've been able to get about 4.5 rebounds, 8 points per game out of Kyron Radliff, and he's right now trying to control things down low. I think that Brody Woodbury, who's able to give the team 6 rebounds per game at 6'11", should do a solid job there. And then the versatility of Sam Hines Jr. comes in from South Florida. 14 points, 8 boards, 3 assists, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range. That should allow the Southeast Louisiana team to remain lively in this one as well. Tre'Kavion Buckley has done a nice job doling it out. 4 assists, 2 steals, 13 points per game in the backcourt. It's a Southeast Louisiana team that they get loose with the ball. They're turning the ball over about 14 times per game. And for Louisiana, to their credit, they do generate a few turnovers of their own. It's a Southeast Louisiana team, though, that they themselves have been able to buckle down on defense. 67 points or fewer allowed in 4 of their last 5 games. And for Louisiana, they've had a rough time with their defense, giving up 76 plus in 4 of their last 5 games. So it's a good old situation of something's got to give with regards to total perspective. I did set my total 145.5. Louisiana typically, when they've had things humming under Bob Marlin, they're typically a little bit more of an up-tempo team. I think that they're going to look to find that identity, and I don't quite want the money line here with Southeast Louisiana, but I think that Louisiana's, shall we say, cover woes continue. I'm going to be willing to take the points, and that'll wrap things up for the Wednesday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. A big thanks to Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the show/podcast Rob's Best Bets. He joined me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @unit_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5 stars review, coming at you guys every single day throughout the season on this podcast, into the off season as well. So I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.